Let's jump over into that first story. We got this one from The Independent. Jane's revenge group appears to threaten violence if Supreme Court overturns Roe.
Oh.
A flyer is calling for an night of rage, I like how they put "an" night, in Washington, D.C. when the Supreme Court decision on Roe is handed down. I chose this source, The Independent, because they're like left-leaning. And I think it's funny that they're saying it appears they're threatening violence when they're outright saying, you told us you would riot. The militant abortion rights organization Jane's Revenge appears to be calling for a night of rage in the nation's capital should the Supreme Court, as is expected, overturn Roe v. Wade later this month. This is the organization that's already taken credit for the vandalism. And I'm not sure, did they take credit for the fire bombings, Seamus?
Let me look up that. Let me look that up.
So we've had now it's like 20 plus either pro-life politicians or pregnancy centers get vandalized, windows smashed out, and some were firebombed, more than one. This is the organization that's taking credit for some of these acts of terror. They're threatening more. You combine that with the showing up in front of the Supreme Court justices' homes. You combine that with the trying to take the life of a sitting Supreme Court justice. And I mean, we've just been watching extreme violence over the past several years. And I got to say, it really does feel like things are crazier than they've been in a very long time.
Yeah, 100%. I completely agree. I think that the worst part about this is it doesn't work. So all it does is dig people deeper into their own. Someone doesn't see that and go, oh, they're firebombing? Well, you know what? Now I'm on your side. No, nobody does that. It just creates more violence. It dehumanizes the other. It validates violence as a way of feeling good about your issue. If you're really upset about this, and I get if you are, I understand that viewpoint, then simply go to your state and have your state make sure that you can have legal and safe abortion in your state. That's the actual answer if you care so much.
But I'll counter with this.
Please.
Violence doesn't work in terms of trying to get support for your cause and win for your cause. But if you're trying to destabilize the country, to burn it down.
Yeah.
See, what happens is I've been doing a lot of reading about Bleeding Kansas. And that's, some people are comparing what's happening now to Bleeding Kansas. It was basically a statewide civil war in the territory of Kansas. It ended because the Civil War started. So it basically, from 1854 until 1861, you had this period of civil war, but in Kansas. Pro-slavery groups and free staters fighting and killing each other. John Brown, who was, rose to notoriety due to Bleeding Kansas.
Sure.
Was angry that abolitionists were pacifists. He didn't care to persuade anyone. He just straight walked up to slave owners and blasted them, just killed them. Killed 5, just walked up to people with his kids, started killing people. He did not care if anyone agreed with him or not. He said, I'm done. What ends up happening is this causes an escalation on the other side. So if your goal is to win for your cause because you're hoping a stable country will say, we voted for this and now this rule will be enacted, that's a terrible idea.
Right.
This Jane's Revenge stuff, the only thing I can see is the outcome is going to be the inverse of what they presumably want. People on the other side are going to counter it, but that will likely just lead to destabilization and more violence.
Yeah, I think. But the other issue is, right, if you're on the side, what media are you listening to and watching? If you're watching media that says, well, this is in reaction to, if that's the media you're hearing, then it sounds like it's almost reasonable. See, it's an attack on us, so we're being aggressive to defend against the bad people who are trying to hurt us. So I'm not sure that it actually turns their side off. If anything, it just makes us, to your point, it makes both sides dig in harder, and it hurts anyone in the middle, because now if I say, hey, stop the violence, the right goes to me, well, they're killing us. And the left goes, well, they're killing us.
Yep.
You're a bad guy. So now I don't hate one side or the other, so now I'm the bad guy too. It actually, what it winds up doing is stifling the calm person. The person says, can we all get along? That stifles that person.
Seamus, did you?
Yeah, so Jane's Revenge has taken credit for various fire bombings of...
Wow.
Yes, from what
The
I'm reading
FBI
here.
says they're
So,
investigating.
Yeah.
The GOP has demanded that they get labeled a domestic terror organization, but I don't think that the federal government actually labels domestic terror organizations. I don't know if that's a thing. You had a lot of people on the right saying Antifa should be, and people on the left saying like the Klan or other right-wing groups should be, and the government's like, we don't label groups, we label actions. Like criminal actions or not. I don't see de-escalation coming. I've been saying this for a long time. In the intro to the show, I pointed out 4 years ago, 5 years ago, maybe even 3 years ago, if I went to you and said in 3 years' time, a far leftist would attempt to assassinate a sitting Supreme Court justice because because for the first time in history, a draft opinion had been leaked showing that Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood v. Casey was going to be overturned. People were showing up in the streets, firebombing buildings. You'd be like, no way.
You know what, though?
People told me that was never going to happen.
The part of that would surprise me the most was the possibility of Roe v. Wade being overturned.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, the fact that the left would react violently is not something I think that would ever have surprised me.
This has to be, this has to be slowly accepted, and it has become, right? Since the recent violence in the streets, right? This has become more acceptable as normal, right? And I'll give you a good example. It's a historical one. If it's, say, 1912, 1913 Germany, and if you were to say to someone, hey, you know what? 30 years from now, you Germans will be systematically, rounding up all your Jewish population and murdering them all. They'd have been like, stop, we're Germany. We would never do that. Come on, stop. Yet 30 years later, they're doing it. And if you were born at that time, if you're a young woman, a young man born in, say, 1910, 1912 in Germany, you would have never thought to do such a thing. It would have taken years for me to be brainwashed enough to do nothing. Right? To not be involved, but just let it happen and be like, well, yeah, I guess they kind of deserve it because they're the bad guys, this guy Hitler said. And I think we're finding a similar thing. Again, my point is they're the bad guys, so it's okay. Remember, people who do bad things always validate their bad behavior. They don't think they're doing bad things. They validate it somehow.
Well, exactly, right? No group of people who ever took power to oppress another group throughout all of history said, you know what, we want to oppress somebody. They go, those people are oppressing us, so we have to stop them, and any and all means which are necessary are therefore justifiable because they're horrible people.
Yes.
And so when you look at this story, there's a really great lesson in media framing here. How did The Independent title this? Jane's Revenge Group appears to threaten violence. No. A terrorist organization which has taken credit for firebombing pro-life organizations as well as charities that are set up to help pregnant women care for their children, is threatening violence.
Not just threatening it, calling on more people to join in.
Yep. Yes.
Yo. That's crazy.
I do think that this is a crazy thing to say, but in wartime, terroristic violence does get people onto your side. For instance, like, the American revolutionaries were terrorists, according to King George. George Washington was a terrorist. And Henry Knox attacked an armory in, I think it was northern New York, early on. Killed a bunch of British guys, stole a bunch of British artillery, took it down to Washington outside Boston. They sieged Boston. They took Boston. And then the French joined the Americans. So, like, if the Americans were losing the battle,
the French didn't join because of that.
It wasn't, but it was a result of victory after victory and a belief that maybe the Americans could win. If the Americans weren't winning, if they weren't doing this terroristic destruction, then the French never would have helped them, and they would have been stomped out. Yeah, but we're not in war. That's a wartime thing. This is not a wartime thing.
But my problem is people aren't upset about this. Mm-hmm. That is my central issue, right? If you look at, say, for example, in New York State recently, the Buffalo shooting, right? Everyone's mad about that. No one's like, yay! Everyone's mad about that. Regardless of what you think, whether it's the guns or the bad guy or the races or whatever you think, you're still not happy about that. This is like whatevs, and that's my point. Mm-hmm. There are enough people who aren't doing anything about it. When they came after the judge, when they came after the judge, I really thought that this would be a big deal, coming after a Supreme Court judge. And now we do nothing about that. That is my problem, is the apathy. That's my biggest issue.
I don't think it's apathy, and I don't think people are whatever about this. I think they support it. I think the left is happy about it, and I think they're happy about what's going on in front of the homes. Jen Psaki said, we certainly encourage more of this.
Yep.
When they were showing up illegally in front of judges' homes to try and sway the court's opinion, which is a federal crime. Then a guy who gets the address and information from these same protesters shows up to kill a sitting Supreme Court justice.
Yep.
Now, that guy gets arrested and charged. Okay, that happened. The protesters come back that same day, and federal government does nothing.
But my point is that the majority of the country doesn't self-identify as left or right like that. They just think they're average people, and they lean left or they lean right. That middle is what is the people who should be angry. The people who should say, look, I'm not a hardcore leftist or rightist, but I'm angry because this is unacceptable, regardless of my left or right. And that's what I'm saying. People aren't saying that.
I don't think there's a middle.
You don't think so?
No. I think
I'm kind of in the middle here.
no.
Well, there's one guy. See, we got one.
No, you're not in the middle. You know exactly what we're talking about. You know exactly what's going
But
on.
when the street violence kicked off in 2020, for instance, and they were bombing buildings and destroying buildings, I wanted Trump to send in the National Guard, and I was like,
Not
why?
now.
Day one, National Guard. But then I started to question myself: am I an authoritarian for wanting the National Guard to come in?
That is not the middle.
Why, but I'm
You
here
have
in
two.
turmoil.
You have two
know?
factions. You go to the average person and say, "What do you think about the fire bombings at pregnancy centers?" And they'll go, "The what?"
Yeah.
Yep.
You go to the other people and they'll say, "I heard about that. That's crazy. We got to stop that." Those are the factions. So
So the faction of those who aren't paying attention, you're saying.
I usually call it the uninitiated and the discerning. The people
Okay.
who are inquisitive and looking into the news, trying to understand what's happening in their world,
Sure.
versus the people who don't want to have don't want anything to do with it.
I meet a lot of those.
So most people, I think, well, I shouldn't say most people, but a lot of people, especially those who voted for Joe Biden, had no idea what was going on, have no idea what they're talking about at all. So
Agreed.
you go to them and you talk about with any of this stuff, and they're going to go, "What?" Here's a great example. Look, I can respect Bill Maher for calling out entitled millennials and the woke and all that. But hearing him talk to Crystal Ball on his show last Friday was laughable. She brought up how everyone keeps ragging on the mass printing of money, but no one said anything in 2020 when the Fed printed trillions of dollars to pump into the stock market to stop it from crashing.
Right.
And Bill Maher goes, "What are you talking about?"
Yes.
Bill, you do not have the position right now to challenge your guests after what happened with Dennis Prager. Crystal Ball was right.
Right.
Okay. And she's a progressive, and she's right. The Federal Reserve started printing up money to buy stocks in essence to bail out the stock exchange, the markets, because there was a fear it was going to tank. And that was bad.
Yep.
So Bill Maher.
That's
he's
Japanese style stuff. Japanese do that all the time.
And you know what? If Bill Maher watched Freedom Tunes, he would have known that because we did a video called Corona
This is my
Capitalism.
point.
All right.
Here's a guy who has a show with 1 million viewers once a week. He does it's a once a week show. He gets about 1 million in the ratings, and he doesn't know what happened 2 years ago with major, massive Fed bailout spending.
It was like the biggest story of the year.
But it's not just that. It's the hubris.
That's my problem. I'm
okay.
okay if he doesn't know, but then why is he aggressively pushing back? He should go, "Oh, did that happen?
Right.
Oh, let me look at that. Hey,
Can I get a producer on this?
Yeah, get a producer to see this
Wow.
happened. 100%.
Crystal, that's
Yes.
a really great point.
Yes.
I wish I had known about that.
Yeah.
No, he was wrong about Covington kids. He didn't pay attention to that. He was wrong when Dennis Prager on his show said they're putting menstrual tampons in the men's room.
Mm-hmm.
He goes, "No, what are you talking about?" This is exactly it. Bill Maher personifies. Now, he may be coming around, right? All of a sudden,
I like his libertarian streak. Let's reward
No,
the
for
good
sure.
behavior. Let's
I
reward
agree.
the good behavior. Absolutely.
But this is my point. I think he is a barometer for many of the what you would probably assume is the middle. If you have people who are blindly voting for the destruction of the country and their values and their economy and everything, I think Bill Maher represents exactly why. They watch him, they listen to him.
Sure.
And he's years behind the curve in what's going on in this country. So I don't view it as there are political moderates and there are extremists. I don't view it as far left, far right, and middle because, well, that makes no sense. You're libertarian. They call you right wing or far right or whatever.
They call me everything bad they can think of.
Exactly.
Yes, whatever they can call me.
They call me right wing, and my politics are like centrist, liberal, libertarian. It doesn't matter. I can sit here across from Seamus and we disagree on the abortion issue traditionally as this country did, but we're both far right. There's no distinction among that group because they don't know what we're talking about.
That's the media, the liberal economic order's media apparatus slandering people, though. That's not a real judgment call.
No, I
No,
think
my
it's-
point
but it does
is-
become real when they brainwash people to believe it.
Yes,
My point is,
that's yes.
you have people who blindly believe it and people who don't. And those are the factions. There's no middle. There's no person who's like, I do believe the narrative, but also not really. It's like, do you know what's going on in this country or don't you? If someone said Joe Biden tried to get a quid pro quo from the president of Ukraine, threatening to withhold U.S. Loan guarantees in exchange for the firing of prosecutor, quid pro quo, and people will be like, we had a guy on the show, he goes, that never happened. And I was like, you want me to pull up the video? And I pull up the video and it's Joe Biden going like, so I tell him, you want the $1 billion, you got to fire the prosecutor. Well, SOB, guy gets fired. And I'm like, did you not even bother Googling this story? You have people.
Yeah, but you're asking, I'm with you, but it's two important questions, I think, here. Number one, if that's true, can you actually expect the average American who's struggling to survive as a general rule to spend that much time understanding everything? They become overwhelmed. It's information over. It's just too much information. It's overload.
I'm not expecting them to do
anything. So they're going to listen to whatever their talking head tells them, whether it's Rachel Maddow or Tucker Carlson, whichever side they pick, or if they're smart, Tim Pool, whoever is their talking head of the day, and they're going to listen to them and probably follow that person.
That's an element, but I see it as on the right, it's the exception. On the left, it's the rule. On the right, you have post-liberals, disaffected liberals, moderates, libertarians, conservatives. Why? Because the right is a group of people who are like, well, I don't think Tucker's right all the time. I'll watch Tucker. I'll see what Brian Stelter and Rachel Maddow are saying, but I want to know what the truth is. You, of course, have people who are like, I just turn on Tucker and I tune everything out.
Sure.
And it's like, okay, well, you're probably better off than if you were watching Rachel Maddow. And then you have people who are like, whatever Anderson Cooper tells me.
Sure.
But
I would go one step further, though. I think you find this right now with Elon Musk. You found it with Joe Rogan. I would even say Dave Rubin. Many of these people were much more left than right. But they stepped over a bound, and some barrier they stepped over. And the left said, not good enough, how dare you? Mm-hmm. And they alienated the person. And the person believed, well, I can't be left, so what can I be? And the right goes, here we are. Hey, we love you, Joe. We love you, David. We love you. Come on over.
Sure,
and they were more accepting. It wasn't that I don't think it was that the person themselves was actually more right-leaning, but they were accepted by the right because they felt shunned by the left.
But there's no right. The right doesn't mean anything. Like, what's a core right-wing value right now? Freedom of speech, maybe?
If you look at, are you saying political or are you talking social?
When we're talking about what left and right means colloquially in cultural politics, in any kind of politics, what is a shared right-wing value? I'd imagine it's free speech. But hold on. The left historically was in favor of free speech.
100%, yeah.
Joe Rogan is not conservative, but they're calling him right-wing now. And it's not that free speech is a right-wing principle. Mm-hmm. It's that the left said, okay, we've now decided if you're for free speech, you are no longer one of us.
Well, yes, and that's my point. You're right. We're on the same page here.
That's why
my point is they were kicked out versus they were pulled in. The right didn't pull them in. They were thrown out by the left.
Exactly.
And accepted by the right.
Joe Rogan
that's my point.
Liberal.
Yeah, and I would agree with you on that. So we're in sort of a strange position where what the left has done culturally is they frame the narrative such that this very bizarre new ideology, which a very tiny sliver of the population believes in, is the dominant view. And if you're against that, there's only one other category for you, which is strange because, the United States, developed Western nations are pretty much the only countries where this ideology or some form of it exists. And even in those countries, it's like maybe 3 or 4% of the population at most who believe it. And yet it's been framed such that there's that view and then there's everyone else's view, even though almost no one in the world actually believes in this. And so it is a problem. You ask the question, what do conservatives actually believe? I think today, because we have this framing and everyone who's outside of that far fringe on the left is conservative, it doesn't mean anything other than you're not in this tiny group.
Yes.
To me, and I'm conservative, what I've understood that to mean is basically pro-family. You are in favor of tradition and many aspects of culture. You believe marriage is between a man and a woman. I guess it depends on how far back you want to go with respect to what was considered acceptable in our culture. But I think that's at the heart of it. When I hear that there are people who are pro-choice being called conservative, it's not just me as a purist saying, I don't want those people in my movement. It's just me recognizing definitions have meanings. How can you be like in favor of like homosexual behavior or abortion and be conservative? I don't understand. Like that doesn't fit. That's not what the word means.
We had a progressive on this show, and Seamus mostly stayed in the conversation, and it was pro-abortion versus pro-choice. And the progressive view was that I was far right for being pro-choice. It's the weirdest nonsense.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of my friends in New York City as they've gotten older who were Democrats for years. Just for years. Parents were Democrats, they're Democrats, and now they can't find a home because they've been told that, Republicans are evil. So I can't vote for Republican. I've been told for 20 years that Republicans are evil, so I can't vote for them, right? But I can't vote Democrats, so I don't believe in them anymore. Mm-hmm. So they're checking out. Now, I'm trying to get them to go to the Libertarian Party, obviously, lp.org, by the way, lp.org. If you're in New York State, lpny.org, by the way. I'm trying to get them to go Libertarian. But it's very hard because they've been taught there's two sides.
Exactly.
There's only two sides. Do everything we say or not, which is why you see so many people are afraid to say the wrong thing. If you say the wrong thing, they throw you out of the tribe.
Yep.
And you
Well,
have to
who
go to the
wants to be in
tribe.
it?
But because in their minds, there's only two tribes. The tribe I've been told is evil for 20 years, and the tribe I'm in now. If I say the wrong thing, I have to go with the evil people that I've been told for 20 years are evil. And it becomes a problem.
I think Comcast bought MSNBC in 2013, right when all this weird stuff started happening. And then they started telling everyone, these other people are enemies, focus, stay inside of our grip. And then so they're starting to think those other people are enemies. And then everyone else that's looking at these people that are now being engaged in this cult have a choice to make. Am I going to be conscientious with these people? Am I going to be considerate and not take it personally? Or they're calling me a villain. Am I going to just strike back? And so a lot you do see people going at it, but
Yes.
then a lot of people aren't, and those people are still considered on the outside of this media
Well,
apparatus.
that's why they hate the whole idea of politics, right? I'm out here campaigning, right? And I'm meeting people. And I find people who very often do one of two things. When I talk to them, they literally do not want to talk to me. Like, I can't deal with this. Nothing to your point. They're totally checked out, right? What would you say, Tim? I'm checked out. I don't want to even talk to you. I can't handle this. Or the other one, they give me some type of test to see if I fit in one side or the other. They'll ask me a question. It's a test. Okay, are you going to say this or are you going to say that? They'll say things, what do you think about kids in school learning about drag queens? They'll ask that question, right? And then if I answer the wrong way, then okay, well, I'm the opposite guy. I'm the bad guy, whatever they want, right? They do that all the time. It's very challenging because I'm trying to give them an answer, right? I'm trying to show them a way. And those are the people who I begin to turn. The people who are interested, but actually feel like the team I was on sucks. The team I'm on now, I'm not happy with. And that's the people who I get to turn. That group of people. The other side sucks. The side I'm on now, not so good either.
Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. But if you want to check out the full show live, tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And if you want more special access content, head over to timcast.com and become a member. Your membership helps sustain this company, keep our journalists employed, makes this show happen, and you will get access to exclusive members-only segments of the Timcast IRL podcast, and there's a massive library to check out. So again, go to timcast.com or tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., and we'll see you all there.